Hi, my name is Raul Roncal, and again, I'm here to give the last presentation of the series of talks on the social teachings of the Catholic Church. The title of this presentation is Living a Life of Social Responsibility. We began this series when I introduced it. I said that part of what we would do is to give a perspective on how we should live our life as disciples. One of the things that I said in my previous talks is this, that social responsibility really begins with a personal choice. And so therefore, it cannot be something that's forced on us. We have to choose it for ourselves. That's why probably you are wondering why there is no list of things to do. Although I do give a lot of suggestions, and I'm giving a few more suggestions of what to do in this presentation. The reason behind that is more than anything, the social teachings of the church fundamentally begin by giving us a vision, a way of understanding life, truths about who we are as human beings and how God made us, and the call for us as disciples and followers of Christ. Those truths are meant to help us then figure out what we need to do. So we continue our discussion, and I will get some insights mainly from the encyclical by Pope Francis entitled Fratelli Tutti, which just means all brothers. Pope Francis got this from Saint Francis of Assisi in one of his opening homilies. Saint Francis of Assisi addressed his listeners and spoke to them by starting his homily and saying, "You are all my brothers and sisters." And in the same way, Pope Francis is speaking to all Christians and all men and women of goodwill and addressing us as brothers and sisters. And he also, in this encyclical, would like us to recognize that all human beings, all of us are interconnected, and that we are brothers and sisters. That's why his perspective on the Good Samaritan, I think, is a very important perspective, because from there, he speaks to us disciples and says, we need to learn from the story of the Good Samaritan, the parable that Jesus used in Luke chapter 10, wherein he gives an explanation of what it means to live as disciples. Pope Francis said of the parable, and the parable eloquently presents the basic decision we need to make in order to rebuild our wounded world. In the face of so much pain and suffering, our only course is to imitate the Good Samaritan. In this encyclical, Pope Francis is saying that if you look at the world, the wounded world, the sufferings of the world, what are our options? Saying there's only one option. You need to be a Good Samaritan. And he then explains, if you decide not to be a Good Samaritan, then what are you doing? Because this, any other decision would make us either one of the robbers or one of those who walk by without showing compassion for the suffering of the one on the roadside. Either we are robbers or one of those who looked at the one who suffered and did not care. We are meant to respond to the needs of others by being a Good Samaritan. That's the main point that Pope Francis wanted to make in explaining the Good Samaritan parable. It speaks to us, again, he says, as an essential and often forgotten aspect of our common humanity. The parable is describing something important about who we are as human beings. Pope Francis continues, we were created for a fulfillment that can only be found in love. Love here is the word agape, the Christian understanding of love. There is one way we can fulfill who we are as human beings if we love. The Good Samaritan is our story. The Good Samaritan is our call. And for us in the Ligaya ng Panginoon community, I think it's also very clear. We're called to be a community of disciples on mission who are good Samaritans. That is part of our discipleship. What are some implications of our life and mission? How do we look at our life and how we live our lives as disciples in the context of this calling that Pope Francis is sort of pointing to us? First, we need to keep our open door mentality in our mission work. I think it's not an accident that we describe one of our main events in the Pathways Ministry that we created in Ligaya as an open door activity. And in the open door mentality activity, we are given a perspective that each person who comes to that event, we need to welcome them. In the encyclical, Pope Francis tells us, hey, move beyond yourself. Look beyond yourself. The lover goes outside the self to find a fuller existence in another. The open door mentality is a mentality that prioritizes the one that we're evangelizing and saying, how can we welcome that person in our community or in our activity or in our life? What do we do? And we can only do that if we look beyond ourselves and look at the person we are reaching out to. An open door mentality. Social transformation, social responsibility affects the way we do our mission work because it invites us to look at the other. We need to, in an ongoing way, develop our ministry of compassion. And here, the perspective that Pope Francis gives us is this. Instead, we should feel indignant challenge to emerge from our comfortable isolation and to be changed by our contact with human suffering. I think our social action ministry, our work of compassion, is described quite well. Work of compassion. Compassion means to suffer with. Here, what Pope Francis is saying, in developing our ministry to the poor, we are not just giving something without encountering the people that we are serving. He's saying we can learn from having some kind of connection with the people that we are helping. We are changed by our encounter with human suffering. I mentioned this in the previous talk. I said that our decision to do a scholarship program that also includes us having some kind of connection with our scholars is a good example of that moving beyond ourselves and encountering the one that we are helping. That's a good way of developing our work. Together with this is the principle of solidarity that should develop our mission and ministry of compassion. This deeper understanding of our connection with others Pope Francis says, solidarity finds concrete expressions in service, which can take a variety of forms in the effort to care for others. The other orientedness of our recognition of our connection with others should influence the way we do our mission in our work of compassion. In all this, I think part of what we also need to do, which is very clear in these principles that I've been sharing, is we also have to recognize that we are citizens of this country. We are Filipinos. And we cannot escape connecting with our fellow Filipinos. And part of what we need to do is to recognize and accept that good citizenship, participation in our social concerns, social political concerns, is part and parcel of what it means to be a disciple. Let me now, with all these implications in mind, give some more practical suggestions. Some things that you could do or things that you could look at into your life. Again, I'm not giving a complete list, but some suggestions of what you could do. First, be involved in our evangelistic mission work. In some way, try to invite friends, try to respond to any call that we give of doing evangelistic work. It's a good way of reaching out and changing society. Those of us who are already part of it, I encourage you, keep on doing it. We need, in an ongoing way, to keep on transforming the lives of people by leading them to find Christ. Take responsibility to be diligent in fulfilling our civic duties. Again, here, there are many things you could do. Pay taxes faithfully. As simple as being honest in that area is an important way of contributing to the development of our society. Participating wisely in the elections, choosing our leaders, being active in learning who to vote for, obvious things that make us involved and not passive about the social political situation in our country. For business people in a smaller scale, taking concern of your employees and knowing that they are justly compensated is another example of being a good citizen. Third, possible concrete action. If you have the skills and you have the calling, being open to working for government and doing something to make a difference in our political system or in serving the needs of our countrymen by being part of a government service, something that's good for a Christian to do. It's also something you could consider. Speak out in a respectful way against injustices in society. We've talked about this many times, but I think it's also very clear that this is part of the social teachings of the church, that we cannot close our eyes when something is going wrong in society and one member of society is being treated unjustly. That's why we spoke against extrajudicial killing, because we want to protect the poor who are affected by these unjust killings. We speak against the war on drugs, not because we are against the war on drugs, but we are against the method that is unjust. And we want to speak against that. And that's one example. And many other examples I could give, but that's one example I could give. Practically speaking against, doing things to communicate to people that we do not allow things like that to happen in our society is part of what it means to be a good citizen. And part of what it means to be a good Samaritan. Last but not the least, taking care of our environment. This could be a talk in itself, but Pope Francis is one of the ones who've been promoting a concern for our common home. Learning some things, practical things, segregation of your trash, or whatever practical things you know and you hear about that contributes to a better environment. Take it on. Take concern not only for your small space in the world, but take concern for our bigger home. Those are some of the practical suggestions that I'd like to give. And I'd like to end this presentation by again reminding us, why are we all here? Why do we even begin talking about this? Well, because the leadership believe that we've always been doing things that's involved in changing society. And we want to understand why that is part and parcel of what it means to be a Christian. And in this series of presentations, I've given you a certain set of perspectives that the Catholic Church has always spoken of. A need to look around us and say, what can we do to help those in need? Let me quote again Pope Francis by saying, in the face of so much pain and suffering, our only course is to imitate the Good Samaritan. My hope is that the series of presentations has helped you at least open the door to understand this area in our life. And as we reflect on our life as a disciple, my encouragement is look at your life and ask yourself, how can I be a good Samaritan? God bless us, and may you respond to that call of the Lord for all of us.